The screech of tires on asphalt ripped through the pre-dawn stillness of the New Jersey highway. A violent crescendo that shattered the nascent peace. In the sterile quiet of their suburban home, Elena Rossi's world imploded with a single, chilling phone call. The voice on the other end, belonging to Marco Moretti, her brother-in-law, was strained, laced with an unbearable gravity. "Ellie, it's Daniel. There's been an accident. A bad one." The words hung in the air. A death knell for the life Elena had meticulously built. The dream, once so vivid and tangible. The white picket fence. The laughter of her daughter Sophia echoing through their sun-drenched living room. The comforting solidity of Daniel's embrace had imploded into a nightmare of fractured asphalt and unspeakable loss. The drive to the county morgue felt like an eternity compressed into a single, agonizing moment. Each mile marker was a testament to time stolen, to a future ripped asunder. The sterile scent of disinfectant and the hushed murmurs of grief clung to the air like a shroud as she finally stood before the grim reality. Daniel, her anchor, her love, lay still, a stranger in a body she once knew intimately. The vibrant spark in his eyes, the easy smile that could melt her worries away, were gone, replaced by a chilling stillness. The vibrant tapestry of their lives, woven with shared dreams and quiet joys, had been violently torn asunder, leaving Elena adrift in a sea of unspeakable sorrow. The life insurance papers, cold and impersonal, felt like an insult to the warmth that had once filled their home. They represented not a comfort, but a stark reminder of the void Daniel's absence had carved into her existence. Returning home was an even crueler ordeal. The house, once a sanctuary, now echoed with his absence. Sophia, only 5, her innocent eyes wide with confusion, kept asking for "Daddy," her small voice a constant, agonizing echo in the suffocating silence. Elena's heart, already shattered, splintered further with each innocent question. How could she explain the finality of death to such a young soul? How could she mend a heart so profoundly broken? The vibrant family photos on the mantelpiece, Daniel's arm around her, Sophia perched on his shoulders, beaming, felt like cruel taunts, ghosts of a happiness that now seemed impossibly distant. She found herself staring at them for hours, tracing Daniel's face with trembling fingers, clinging to the last vestiges of his presence. The aroma of his favorite coffee still lingered faintly in the kitchen, a phantom scent that brought fresh waves of pain. Every corner of their home held a memory, a painful reminder of what she had lost. The worn armchair where he used to read to Sophia, the small toolbox he kept meticulously organized in the garage, even the scent of his aftershave still faintly clinging to his favorite jacket, all served as a constant, brutal reminder of his irretrievable absence. The whispers began almost immediately, insidious and venomous, slithering through the hushed tones of condolences. Elena, still reeling from the shock, found herself the unwilling subject of speculation. So young, they'd murmur, their eyes darting towards her with an unsettling mixture of pity and veiled judgment. Such a tragedy, but she seems remarkably composed. Composed? She was drowning. Composed was a mask she wore to keep from disintegrating entirely, a fragile shield against the onslaught of grief and the prying eyes of the community. They spoke of the Moretti legacy, of Daniel's family's influence and wealth, subtly implying that Elena, as the grieving widow, was now a beneficiary of that empire. The whispers grew louder, morphing into a chorus of innuendo. She heard them in the supermarket aisles, felt them in the awkward silences at the cemetery, saw them in the averted gasms of old acquaintances. The Moretti name, once a symbol of Daniel's quiet strength and dedication, now felt like a heavy burden, a spotlight exposing her vulnerability to the world's relentless scrutiny. Mr. Salvatore, Sal, Moretti, Daniel's father, was a man forged in the crucible of ambition and tradition, a former titan of industry. His presence loomed large, a stoic figure whose grief was masked by a steely resolve. He viewed Elena not as a grieving widow, but as an outsider who had married into his legacy. His condolences were curt, his gaze sharp and assessing. He spoke of family honor and protecting what Daniel built, his words laced with an undercurrent of suspicion directed solely at Elena. He saw her grief not as a sign of love, but as a potential ploy for inheritance. Daniel was a good son, he'd stated, his voice devoid of warmth. But you, Elena, you must understand your place now. This is our family's loss. And our business to manage. His pronouncements were delivered with an air of unassailable authority, leaving Elena feeling like a pawn in a game she didn't understand. Her own pain dismissed as insignificant in the face of his perceived duty to his son's legacy. He saw her youth, her relative lack of established career outside their shared life, as a weakness, a vulnerability to be exploited. The subtle insinuations that she was somehow lesser than the Moretti name began to gnaw at her, planting seeds of doubt and insecurity in her already fragile state. The whispers and Sal's increasingly controlling behavior coalesced into a suffocating cloud of pressure. Elena found herself increasingly isolated, her grief dismissed, her future dictated by the whims of a man who saw her as an obstacle rather than a partner. She needed to grieve, to find a way to survive, not just for herself, but for Sophia, who deserved a mother strong enough to navigate this devastating loss. But how could she when the very people who should have offered solace were instead casting judgment and tightening their grip? The dream of their life together had shattered, leaving behind a landscape of fear and uncertainty. And Elena knew, with a chilling premonition, that the fight for her own peace, and for her daughter's future, had only just begun. The echoes of Daniel's absence were deafening. But the unspoken judgments and manipulative tactics of Sal Moretti were creating a new, more terrifying silence she would have to confront. Elena's days dissolved into a relentless cycle of survival, each dawn bringing a fresh wave of dread. The house, once filled with Daniel's quiet presence, now felt like a museum of her shattered life, every object a painful artifact of his absence. Sophia, blessedly oblivious to the full weight of their tragedy, would ask for "Daddy," with an innocence that tore at Elena's heart, forcing her to conjure a brave face, to weave tales of him being on a long trucking trip, promising his return. But the lie tasted like ash in her mouth, a temporary balm for Sophia's innocent sorrow that only deepened Elena's own despair. She took on any work she could find, cleaning offices late at night, delivering groceries, anything to keep their heads above water, to stave off the encroaching financial abyss. The meager savings Daniel had left were dwindling at an alarming rate, a constant source of anxiety that gnawed at her sleep. She found herself scrutinizing every bill, every expense, her mind perpetually calculating, a stark contrast to the carefree woman she had been just weeks before. The laughter that once came so easily was now a distant memory, replaced by a gnawing fear for their future. Mr. Sal Moretti, however, saw her struggle not as a testament to her resilience, but as a weakness to be exploited. His pronouncements grew bolder, his control more insidious. He spoke of protecting Daniel's legacy, of ensuring Elena and Sophia were taken care of. But his actions belied any genuine concern. He insisted, with an unshakable conviction that brooked no argument, that Elena and Sophia should move into the sprawling Moretti mansion, a place that felt more like a gilded cage than a home. "It's for your own good, Elena," he'd declared, his voice a low, gravelly rumble that held an undeniable threat. "Daniel wouldn't want you struggling. And I need to keep an eye on things. Ensure proper arrangements are made." The implication was clear. Her life, her finances, even her grief, were now under his jurisdiction. He began to weave a narrative, subtly at first, then with increasing force, that Elena was incapable of managing on her own, that she was a burden he was magnanimously shouldering. He would appear unannounced at her makeshift office in the garage, ostensibly to check in, but his eyes would sweep the room, cataloging every item, every document, his presence a constant, suffocating reminder of his omnipresent gaze. He'd grill her about her work, questioning her clients, subtly suggesting that her efforts were futile, that she was merely wasting her time while his family's resources were being depleted. The whispers, once confined to hushed tones, now began to take on a more menacing quality. Elena overheard snippets of conversations, veiled accusations about her sudden wealth, and her lack of discretion. She felt eyes on her wherever she went, the palpable judgment of the community a constant weight on her shoulders. Aunt Gina, Marco's wife, A woman known for her sharp tongue and even sharper gaze became an unlikely, yet potent, source of these insidious rumors. Gina, resentful of Elena's perceived luck, and the attention Sal lavished on Elena, even if it was critical, would twist innocent interactions into something scandalous. Saw Elena talking to that delivery guy for quite a while. She'd relay to anyone who would listen, her voice dripping with manufactured concern. He looked quite attentive. You know, Daniel's gone, and she's still so young. These whispers, amplified by Gina's venomous pronouncements, began to paint a picture of Elena as a woman of loose morals, eager to replace Daniel, a stain on the hallowed Moretti name. Elena found herself ostracized, her grief ignored, her struggle trivialized. The small kindnesses she once received from neighbors now felt tinged with suspicion. Their offers of help often laced with questions that felt more like interrogations. The isolation was profound, a silent torment that amplified her sense of being trapped. It was during one of her late-night cleaning shifts, scrubbing floors in a deserted downtown office building, that Elena's life intersected with David Chen's. He was a man cloaked in a profound, almost palpable sadness, a quiet intensity that drew her in. He was there for a similar reason, a solitary presence amidst the sleeping city, a fellow traveler in the desolate landscape of loss. Their initial interactions were brief, fleeting moments of shared silence, then hesitant words exchanged over lukewarm coffee in the deserted break room. He spoke vaguely of a tragedy, a loss that had hollowed him out, leaving him adrift. There was no pretense, no forced sympathy, just a quiet understanding that resonated deeply with Elena's own pain. He didn't ask intrusive questions about Daniel or the Morettis. Instead, he spoke of the quiet strength found in enduring, the subtle beauty of resilience. He noticed the exhaustion etched on her face, the tremor in her hands as she poured another cup of coffee. You shouldn't be doing this alone, Elena, he'd said, his voice gentle, unburdened by judgment. He offered her a business card, a discreet invitation to connect, not as a savior, but as a fellow soul who understood the profound weight of carrying on when the world felt like it had crumbled. He saw the desperation in her eyes, the quiet courage she fought to maintain, and a flicker of something akin to hope ignited within him. He understood that sometimes, the greatest comfort comes not from grand gestures, but from the quiet acknowledgement that one is not entirely alone in the darkness. He offered her a lifeline, not of pity, but of genuine, unspoken support. Elena clutched the card, the embossed lettering a small island of solidity in the turbulent sea of her emotions. She hesitated, the ingrained suspicion fostered by Sal's constant scrutiny warring with a desperate yearning for human connection. But David's eyes held no judgment, only a profound empathy. He saw her not as a Moretti widow, or a potential gold digger, but as a woman fighting for survival. He was a ghost of a man, haunted by his own past, yet somehow, in his quiet presence, he offered a sliver of solace, a faint whisper of hope that perhaps, just perhaps, she wouldn't have to navigate this treacherous path entirely alone. The unspoken understanding between them, born of shared pain, became a fragile bridge in the encroaching darkness. The pregnancy announcement, a flicker of hope amidst the encroaching despair, was met not with joy, but with a venomous fury that shocked Elena to her core. The faint, hopeful glow she had seen in the ultrasound's grainy image, the promise of Daniel's legacy, a tangible piece of him to hold onto, was extinguished by the cold, hard gaze of Sal Moretti. He didn't see a miracle, he saw a betrayal. His face contorted, his voice a guttural roar that seemed to vibrate with years of suppressed rage and distrust. A baby? Now? He spat, the words laced with disgust. You think I'm a fool, Elena? You think I don't see what's happening? Daniel's barely cold in his grave, and you're already tainted. The accusation hung heavy in the air, thick with unspoken horrors. He painted a vivid, disgusting picture of her life outside the confines of his watchful eye, conjuring images of clandestine meetings, of illicit affairs, of her using her grief as a cloak for debauchery. This thing in you, he hissed, his eyes narrowed with loathing. It's not Daniel's. It can't be. You've shamed his memory, shamed this family. You will not bring that bastard into my son's house. His demand was immediate and absolute: abortion. He presented it not as a choice, but as a necessity, a way to cleanse the stain and preserve the Moretti honor. He threatened to cut her off completely, to leave her and Sophia destitute, to ensure she would never again be a part of Daniel's world. The very foundation of Alina's life, already precarious, threatened to crumble beneath the weight of his accusation and ultimatum. She felt trapped, a cornered animal with nowhere to run. The hope she had clung to for so long dissolving into a suffocating despair. Her world, already teetering on the brink, was systematically dismantled by Sal's relentless machinations. He didn't just verbally abuse her, he actively sabotaged her attempts to build a new life. When she tried to secure a steady job at a local diner, Sal mysteriously called the owner, painting a picture of Elena as unreliable, a potential lawsuit waiting to happen, her emotional instability a threat to their business. He used his old connections, his lingering influence, to shut every door that might have offered her a path to independence. He intercepted potential clients for her small cleaning business, whispering tales of her financial desperation and questionable morals. He even managed to subtly turn some of her acquaintances against her, twisting her need for work into evidence of her greed. Elena found herself increasingly isolated. The few tentative friendships she had begun to forge with other mothers at Sophia's preschool withering under the silent pressure of Sal's disapproval. He'd corner her at school events, his booming voice carrying across the playground, loudly proclaiming his disappointment in her, his concern for Daniel's legacy, his words dripping with insinuation. The other parents, eager to avoid the Moretti family's ire, quickly distanced themselves, leaving Elena feeling utterly alone. Her efforts to build a respectable life thwarted at every turn. The breaking point arrived not with a bang, but with a quiet, agonizing decision. The constant pressure, the relentless accusations, the sabotage of her every attempt at self-sufficiency, coupled with the physical strain of her pregnancy and the emotional toll of raising Sophia alone, had worn her down to the bone. One sweltering afternoon, after Sal had publicly berated her in front of a group of her daughter's classmates' parents, leaving her trembling and humiliated, Elena knew she couldn't endure it any longer. She packed a few essentials into a worn duffel bag, her hands shaking as she tucked Sophia's favorite stuffed bear into the side pocket. She left a note for Sal, not an apology, but a declaration of her departure, a silent renunciation of his control. Then, with Sophia clinging to her hand, her heart a leaden weight in her chest, she walked out of the house that had once represented her dreams and into an uncertain future. The drive to her mother's house in a neighboring state felt like a desperate flight. Mrs. Rossi, her own life marked by quiet struggles and unwavering love, welcomed her with open arms, her own grief for Daniel tempered by a fierce maternal protectiveness for Elena and her grandchildren. But the Moretti shadow, Elena knew, was long. Sal would not let go easily. His pride, his perceived honor, demanded a reckoning. The arrival of David Chen was a quiet intervention, a lifeline tossed into the turbulent waters of Elena's life. He found her not in the grand Moretti mansion, but in a cramped, rented apartment on the outskirts of town, her days a blur of frantic work and sleepless nights. He didn't arrive with fanfare or grand pronouncements. Instead, he appeared one evening, unannounced, with a bag of groceries and a quiet understanding in his eyes. He saw the exhaustion etched onto her face, the flicker of fear that never quite left her gaze. He didn't pry into the details of her estrangement from the Morettis. Sensing the deep well of pain that lay beneath the surface, he simply offered practical support, help with repairs around the apartment, anonymous financial assistance that appeared in her mailbox, and, most importantly, a listening ear. He shared his own story of loss, the lingering pain of losing his wife and child in a car accident, a tragedy he blamed himself for. This shared vulnerability forged an unexpected bond. Elena found herself confiding in him, sharing fears and anxieties she had kept locked away, even from her own mother. David, in turn, listened without judgment, his quiet presence a steady anchor in her storm. He never pushed, never pried, but his support was unwavering, a constant, silent affirmation that she was not alone. He understood the insidious nature of control, the suffocating weight of being manipulated and doubted. His own experience had taught him the deep chasm between outward appearances and inner turmoil. And he recognized Alina's quiet strength beneath the layers of grief and exhaustion. He saw her not as a victim, but as a survivor, a warrior fighting for her children's future. However, Sal Moretti's grip tightened with Alina's newfound, albeit fragile, independence. He viewed her departure not as an act of self-preservation, but as an act of defiance, a direct insult to his authority. His concern for Daniel's legacy twisted into a possessive obsession. He began to believe that Elena was deliberately trying to alienate Sofia from the Moretti family, to erase Daniel's memory, and to usurp what he considered his birthright. His actions became more aggressive. He used his influence to spread rumors about Alina's financial instability and her alleged unsuitability as a mother, subtly undermining her attempts to secure stable employment. He made veiled threats, hinting at legal battles over Sofia's custody, implying that he could easily prove Elena was an unfit parent, incapable of providing for her daughter. The whispers of the community, once mere gossip, now seemed to carry the weight of Sal's pronouncements, ostracizing Elena further. Even Marco and Isabella, caught between their loyalty to Sal and their growing concern for Elena, found themselves in an untenable position. Marco, though empathetic, was hesitant to openly defy his father, fearing the repercussions for his own family. Isabella, while pragmatic, recognized the escalating danger Elena faced. Elena found herself increasingly isolated, the weight of Sal's machinations pressing down on her, threatening to crush her spirit entirely. The American dream, once a symbol of hope and opportunity, now felt like a cruel mirage, a distant promise forever out of reach. The delivery room, bathed in the sterile, unforgiving glow of fluorescent lights, became the crucible where Elena's resolve was forged anew. The agonizing hours of labor, the raw, primal pain, were interspersed with flashes of memory: Daniel's loving smile, Sofia's innocent questions, Sal's hateful accusations. Each contraction was a wave of agony, but also a surge of fierce determination. This child, this precious life born from loss and hardship, was not a symbol of shame, but a testament to her own indomitable spirit. As the final push came, a guttural cry ripped from her throat, a sound that was both agony and exultation. Then, a new cry, small and piercing, filled the room. A son, a healthy baby boy, a tiny, perfect echo of Daniel, a symbol of hope reborn. In that moment, Elena felt an overwhelming sense of purpose, a fierce, maternal instinct that transcended all fear and doubt. She looked at her newborn son, his tiny fingers curled around hers, and a quiet strength settled deep within her. She would not be broken. She would not be defeated. The aftermath of the birth brought a temporary, fragile peace. The joy of holding her new son, Liam, was a balm to her wounded soul. Sofia, initially shy, soon blossomed, her eyes wide with wonder as she gently touched her baby brother's hand. Elena's mother, Mrs. Rossi, her face etched with a mixture of relief and weariness, was a constant, comforting presence, her quiet strength a steady support. But the peace was precarious, constantly shadowed by the looming threat of Sal Moretti. Elena knew he would not rest until he had tried to reclaim what he considered his. Her newfound resolve, however, gave her a clarity she hadn't possessed before. She confided in David, her voice steady despite the lingering exhaustion. "I need to be independent. David," she stated, her gaze firm. "I can't live under anyone's shadow. Not even Daniel's anymore. I need to build something for my children. Something that is truly ours." David, his own past echoing in her words, understood. He offered his continued support, not as a savior, but as a steadfast ally, helping her navigate the legal and financial complexities of securing her future. He introduced her to contacts, helped her explore business opportunities, always emphasizing her own strength and agency. He became a silent guardian, a steady presence, never overstepping, always respecting her boundaries. His quiet belief in her a powerful force. The legal battles that followed were brutal. Sal Moretti, relentless in his pursuit, unleashed a barrage of accusations and legal challenges. attempting to paint Elena as an unfit mother and a financial opportunist. Marco and Isabella, torn between their father and their conscience, found themselves caught in the crossfire. Marco, ultimately unable to stand by while his brother's widow and children were tormented, confronted his father, leading to a bitter estrangement. Isabella, ever pragmatic, focused on securing her own family's future, her support for Elena becoming more vocal as Sal's actions grew increasingly reckless. Elena, however, found her strength not in the courtroom, but in the quiet resilience of her daily life. She channeled her pain into building her business, a small, but growing, catering service specializing in authentic Italian cuisine, a nod to her heritage and Daniel's love for his roots. She worked tirelessly, pouring her heart and soul into every dish, her focus unwavering. Sophia, now a bright-eyed 7-year-old, helped where she could, her small hands carefully arranging napkins, her laughter a constant source of joy. Liam, growing stronger each day, was her constant companion, her motivation. The whispers in town gradually shifted, replaced by murmurs of admiration for Elena's tenacity, her dedication. People saw not a grieving widow seeking handouts, but a determined businesswoman forging her own path. The climax arrived not in a dramatic courtroom showdown, but in a quiet confrontation at the Moretti mansion. Elena, now a successful entrepreneur, arrived not as a supplicant, but as a woman who had reclaimed her power. She presented Sal with a clear, legally binding agreement, meticulously crafted with David's help, outlining her financial independence and her sole custody of the children. She spoke not with anger, but with a quiet dignity, acknowledging Daniel's memory but firmly establishing her own path. Daniel loved us, Mr. Moretti, she stated, her voice calm but unwavering. And he would want us to be happy, to be free. I am no longer asking for your approval, only your acknowledgement of a reality you can no longer control. Sal, faced with irrefutable evidence and the quiet strength radiating from Elena, was rendered speechless. His bluster, his accusations, seemed to crumble in the face of her hard-won independence. He saw not the vulnerable young widow he had tried to dominate, but a formidable woman who had built her own empire from the ashes of her shattered dreams. He was left with the bitter taste of defeat, his control broken, his legacy no longer solely his to dictate. The echoes of unspoken words still lingered, but for Elena, they were no longer echoes of pain, but whispers of resilience, of a future she had fought for and ultimately reclaimed. The American dream, once shattered, was slowly, painstakingly, being rebuilt, brick by brick, on a foundation of her own unwavering strength.